We've got a genuinely busy stretch of weather to unpack today, so let's not waste any time. Severe thunderstorms are already lining up across the Midwest, with real flash flooding potential. A stubborn heat dome is about to expand its footprint deep into the central states and out in the Pacific. A typhoon is barreling toward landfall in China. On top of all that, I'll walk you through where the Atlantic tropics stand heading into the heart of hurricane season. There's a lot to cover, so let's break down the upper-level pattern first, because that's really the key to understanding everything that unfolds over the next week or two. By the way, if you'd like specific weather forecasts for your region or city, please leave them in the comments. I'll answer them individually as time allows. Also, if you like the video and subscribe to my channel, you'd be very grateful. Now, let's move on. We've got a trough of low pressure sitting up across Canada, and low pressure like that tends to stir up more active weather, so that's the zone to watch farther north. Meanwhile, a big ridge of high pressure has carved out a donut hole stretching from the desert southwest eastward into the southern plains. At the same time, the Bermuda High is creeping westward across the southwest Atlantic and is going to keep pressing into the southeast over the coming days. For today, the Storm Prediction Center has issued a Level 1 out of 5 marginal risk for isolated strong to severe storms across 3 separate zones. Northern Illinois through eastern Iowa into Missouri, including the Lake of the Ozarks area. Another stretch from northeastern New Mexico through the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles, and a third pocket in southeastern Arizona. Damaging wind gusts are the primary concern in all 3 areas, though hail and an isolated brief tornado can't be ruled out. The tornado threat itself is low, sitting at just 2% across west-central Illinois and northeast Missouri, covering areas from Galesburg down through Peoria and Macomb, plus the region north and west of the St. Louis metro. Tomorrow brings another round of scattered strong to severe storms, this time targeting Nebraska and South Dakota, a slice of northwestern Oklahoma, and a corridor running from New York through eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, and into northern Virginia. Friday doesn't carry an official severe weather outlook, but general thunderstorms remain likely across the central 2/3 of the country. Zooming into the next 48 hours, showers and storms are already pushing across the Midwest this midday, moving through Iowa, northern Missouri, and into Illinois. Most of these should weaken as they cross the Mississippi toward Chicago, though some rain could still sneak in later this afternoon. I expect the heaviest activity to favor southern Iowa and northern Missouri, where locally heavy downpours and torrential rain are likely through the evening. The kind of setup that can quickly overwhelm drainage systems if storms train over the same areas. Overnight, additional storms should fire up from Kansas City, stretching toward western Illinois, and that's when the real flash flooding risk kicks in. So keep a close eye on Missouri and downstate Illinois through the overnight hours, especially if you're in a flood-prone area or near small streams and creeks. Thursday, those storms track through the St. Louis metro before weakening as they push into southern Illinois and Indiana. Thursday afternoon and evening bring another round of widely scattered strong to severe storms along a couple of corridors we're watching closely. Then, on Friday, a fresh complex develops quickly across southern Missouri before washing out once it crosses into northern Arkansas, with more scattered showers and storm chances continuing farther east. Rainfall totals could get impressive across Missouri, southern Iowa, and Illinois, with some spots picking up 2 to 3 inches. Missouri stands out again here, carrying a slight risk for excessive rainfall that could trigger a flash flood event or two, covering the Kansas City and St. Joseph metros up through the Quad Cities, Chicago, Peoria, and Springfield. There's also a slight risk for excessive rainfall stretching from Myrtle Beach down to Charleston along the South Carolina coast today. Tomorrow, that risk broadens into more of a marginal category, spanning from the desert southwest through the Ohio Valley and into parts of the northeast and southeast. Wind gusts over the next few days will run strongest across the desert southwest, tied to monsoon flow, and up in the Canadian prairies, particularly Saskatchewan and southern Manitoba. Southern Manitoba could see higher elevation gusts topping 60 miles per hour. So if you're driving a semi through that region toward the end of the week, that's worth factoring into your plans. Now, back to that ridge of high pressure over the desert southwest and southern plains. It's set to amplify and strengthen further heading into the weekend, and this is really the centerpiece of the whole forecast pattern right now. You can already see the rain-cooled air settling in farther north, while the heat builds hard to the south underneath that dome. Humidity is climbing fast across Oklahoma City, Dallas, Little Rock, Shreveport, and Houston, all sitting above 100 degrees this afternoon. And Thursday looks much the same for Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana, with heat index values that could push toward dangerous territory for anyone spending extended time outdoors. That intense heat holds mostly steady into Friday before starting to shift northward, pulling Kansas into the picture with Topeka, Dodge City, Wichita, and Kansas City all heating up considerably, along with Lincoln, Nebraska. By the weekend, the heat pushes even farther north into Nebraska, bringing North Platte, Lincoln, and Omaha into heat index territory near 100 degrees. A pretty stark shift for areas that don't typically deal with this kind of extended heat this time of year. Looking at the second week of August, there's no real signal this heat dome is backing off anytime soon. If anything, it looks poised to strengthen. From August 8th through the 15th, expect the hottest air to expand farther north, moving beyond just the southern plains into the central and eventually northern plains, reaching toward the mid-Missouri Valley. That's a placement worth tracking closely. Meanwhile, monsoonal moisture continues over the ridge out west. A storm complex tracks across the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, and Ohio Valley, and the East Coast sees a more mixed precipitation signal. By the third week of August, I expect a similar overall setup. Hot, dry conditions dominating the south under that ridge, while precipitation moves across the Dakotas and Nebraska through the upper Midwest, including Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, and Michigan, before fishtailing eastward toward New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine as the month progresses. Looking at the full 30-day picture, the plains look consistently hot, especially the central and southern plains where the peak heat concentrates, while a northwest flow keeps things somewhat cooler from the Great Lakes and upper Midwest into the northeast, a classic ring of fire setup. Underneath that ridge, flash drought conditions look likely to develop across the southern plains, including Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and southeastern Kansas, where hot, dry conditions will dry out soil moisture quickly. Farther west, monsoonal moisture continues streaming through the Four Corners region, up into Wyoming, the Nebraska Panhandle, and South Dakota, wrapping around the crest of that ridge into the upper Midwest with periodic storm cluster risks. Shifting over to the tropics, we've been tracking Typhoon Dolphin in the West Pacific for a while now, and it continues pushing westward, closing in on Taiwan and China, with landfall expected in eastern China by Thursday or Friday. Significant hazards are expected there, including dangerous wave swell, storm surge, and beach erosion, so coastal residents in that path should be paying close attention as it approaches. There's another system trailing right behind it, though this one looks likely to recurve back toward Japan before potentially curving further into the northwest Pacific. Sea surface temperatures show El Niño's influence stretching all the way out to the international dateline, and there's a second marine heat wave sitting off the east coast of Japan, extending into the North Pacific. If that trailing system recurves into those warmer waters, it could strengthen further before it's done, something worth watching over the coming days. On the Atlantic side, that same strong El Niño is actively suppressing hurricane season activity across the Caribbean and Gulf as we move through late summer, a pattern that's held fairly consistent all season. There is one system we're watching that may try to develop east of the United States, but it's tracking away from the East Coast, so it's not a concern for anyone stateside. Beyond that, attention shifts to the main development region off Africa near the Cape Verde Islands, stretching out toward the Lesser Antilles. Only a handful of model members show any real lower pressure signal there, tucked beneath that Bermuda High extending from West Africa southeastward. Water temperatures in that region aren't particularly striking either. The warmest Atlantic water right now sits up near Europe, which tracks with the intense heat waves Europe has dealt with this summer, leaving the main development region with fairly normal to even below normal water temperatures. The Caribbean looks similar, with the Gulf running a bit warmer near the Bay of Campeche, but otherwise things stay suppressed, partly thanks to Saharan dust streaming off Africa, which dries out the air and chokes off tropical development before storms can really get organized. Overall, the probability of anything organizing in the main development region sits at essentially nil, topping out around 10% through roughly August 19th or 20th. And anything that does eventually push off the East Coast looks likely to curve harmlessly out into open water, away from land. So right now the Atlantic is quiet while the Pacific stays active. Stay safe out there, stay cool if you're anywhere near that expanding heat dome, and I'll have another update for you soon.